In part four, we talked about networking, and people generally view networking as something that will be beneficial for themselves and their own personal career. Now, DeWayne talks about the power of when those networking relationships band around a common goal to benefit the entire community. I have been waiting for this question. I'm so excited about this question.
Okay, what is it? Drum roll.
You have used your time in your early retirement so well to build community. So we have both Bridge Builder that you and your wife have done, and then most recently the Southern Georgia Black Chambers that you
Yes.
have brought from the ground up, right? So can you please let us know why it's important to have representation through the Black Chambers of Commerce, and what does SGBC provide members that is missing from a traditional Chamber of Commerce membership?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the first part of that, why it's essential, necessary, etc. It's sort of like basically everybody's got an affinity group, something that they are really tuned in with as far as the mission. I don't care if it's whether it's Down syndrome, cancer awareness, and so there is a discrepancy, or not discrepancy, but disparity. Excuse me. There's a disparity between what, over historical sense, that Black Americans have been able to achieve compared to our white counterparts, based on the history, systematic histories and setbacks, that we really have to deal with that. We can't necessarily think that because simply just the black and white of it, if we just walked into the same room, the same bank, and given the same tools, etc., that I know as much as you do, or I will be given the same accesses that you will be given. A lot of that is predicated on skin tone, unfortunately. Now, the fortunate thing, and I think what kind of makes me different as far as just mentality, is that I've seen, but not really experienced a lot that has set me back. And I say that because, again, thankful to my mom and dad as far as just how they really molded the man I've become. And then also that has given me opportunity to be in certain classes, gifted classes, Georgia Tech, etc. So that when I got into the workforce and community aspect of it, I just thought differently. We kind of went through all that on how I think. That's because of my upbringing. Others, I understand, haven't had that, and others actually have been impacted. So to me, and this is the dad, and my dad in me, is that I just feel like it's my obligation to turn back and say, okay, how can I help somebody else get to at least the mentality, if not better than where I am? So with that, and understanding the history of it, and that's why African American history is so important. And again, kudos to the Copeland African American Museum that you spearhead as the executive director there, because that's a narrative that has to be explored. It has to be communicated. It has to be seen and shown. Because if you go through, and I'm talking about everybody, but particularly anybody that says, well, I don't see color, or, well, I've been given the same opportunities you have, or, well, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You really have to pause and go into that deep dive history, because we haven't started from the same starting point. We have not been given the same lineage of assistance and supportive means to be able to start at the same point. Have you ever seen like the video, like they're out in the park and have a group of people and they say, if you,
Yes.
yeah, okay. So for those
Yes,
that
I
haven't
have seen
seen
that.
it, and if you
I'll reference it in the link below. I'll
I was
reference
about to
it
say,
in the
yes,
link below.
please link
Yeah.
it, right.
Yeah.
So just a little bit of the visual content is that for those that hadn't seen it. So, and I'm not going to be able to go through all the descriptors and triggers that were announced, but everybody, from backgrounds across the board, primarily you look at it from a black and white standpoint, really. But if you came from a two-parent household, take 5 steps forward, or whatever it is. If you never had a bad occurrence with a police officer, step forward. If you don't have a family member in prison or in a judicial system turmoil, or if you don't have to pay child support or never had it, all these things that sort of other people take for granted. I was like, no, I haven't had that. And so I'm walking forward. But the concept is that if you have not been traumatized by any of those setbacks, you are starting a race way ahead of your peers, and peers by human race peers, because a lot of your Black Americans have encountered things that others have not. And so I'm sorry, bringing this full circle to what we were talking about is that has happened a lot in business. So mere example, and this is not just in one location, but this is something that we look to more so predominantly is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when there was Black Wall Street. Black business people were doing so well that outsiders decided they wanted to just bomb and set fire and destroy what they had built, which was a thriving, self-sustaining Black business area within Tulsa.
What would have been generational wealth building, and wealth not just in the financial, obviously the financial, but the experience of how you run a business, how you overcome the challenges. So I just wanted to add that it's so much more than just, being able to have mentors that look like you, that have done what it is that you're wanting to try to do. And that was all happening in Tulsa whenever.
So it got a lot of that is being normalized now, right? And so, you can find a mentor that looks like you now. You probably will find more so, like our kids will see business happening in their household. It's being normalized now, but again, they're starting at a starting point that others, they've been talking about this in their house for generations as far as business. And so that's a very good point that you make there. And so basically that's what we're doing with our Black Commerce Associations. It's a membership-based association, which is basically a 501c6 IRS determination for membership-based organization, but it puts you in a cloud or level with other traditional chamber associations, so that your members get to have benefits wherever they choose to cast their membership. And so with that, what we're trying to do is just bring primarily focus on that disparity and the need to support Black-owned businesses. Not that, oh, you don't shop anything but Black. Some people are very in tune with that. But at the same time, there has to be a focus that, hey, let me think about it, because a lot of my money goes to a traditional sense in one direction, but I've got to at least explore resources to this segment of the population that otherwise does not have those same resources. So when I readily just give to certain other organizations, it's really accelerating the generational wealth of a certain segment versus actually paying attention to how we actually help another segment catch up, which that's barely not possible to a degree, but anything's possible. But it's going to take a long time and different balances for that even to be a notion. But the point is that, what we're basically doing is just showcasing where resources can be given to or directed towards a segment of business owners.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love seeing the things that you have been able to accomplish already. And speaking of the networking, the pictures of you with Senators Ossoff and Reverend Warnock, and just, like you said, tapping into resources where resources are needed, and then having a specific, seat at the table for that, specifically with SGBC, is great.
So if I can tap in on that, so thank you for recognizing that and mention it, because that's the example that I'm talking about, is that, and so there's the difference that if we didn't start this, there would be, theoretically, there would be a limited amount of advocating at that intentionality for Black-owned businesses, to where I'm actually able to meet with Reverend Warnock, Senator Warnock, and meet with Senator Ossoff and talk about our challenges, our needs. And that's why a particular organization such as a Black Chamber Association is needed, because quite frankly, you're not going to get that in a traditional sense from a 100% standpoint. And it is what it is. I mean, it's just what it is. The base is much wider at a traditional chamber, and there's nothing wrong with that, because we have members that support both chambers because you have clients in both areas, so it makes sense. What we do on our end is just basically more of a targeted advocating for our members.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm
Right.
so happy. And I'm so glad that the museum, the Copeland
Oh
African
my
American
goodness,
Museum that
yes.
you referenced, is a member. Appreciate that. Okay, so you mentioned this, and one of the students mentioned this, so I'm super excited for this question as well. As a member of the Divine Nine as
Yeah.
well, this is from the student, I'm sure you've done a lot of networking and helping to shape the community, but what would you say is your most memorable act of service within the community?
Hmm. Well, right now, this is it. I mean, right now, I'm sort of in my best prime, if you will, of doing what I do best. I've developed into a point, and again, this goes back to, I think this is a great final topic of questions here, because everything that we talked about actually has led to this road. The financial success has allowed me to do this. All right. The upbringing and exposure has allowed me to see certain things from different points of views, whether it's from the south of the tracks or the north side of town. I have associations on both sides. And so I see things from all perspectives in that way. I can get into rooms or feel empowered to go talk to the city council or email my mayor, or I don't know somebody over in Thomasville, but I'm just going to network my way over there and find out, how do I get Thomasville to do a Black Business Month proclamation, which is what we did, and to honor and really talk about the disparities. So having the empowerment piece to do what I'm doing now is really my lane right now, because from a numbers, business, and cultural standpoint, I think it's all come together to where, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, it can be frustrating. Anything is frustrating when you're going to have setbacks, but it would be highly frustrating, as it was coming back to Valdosta, hometown, and seeing a huge disparity and nothing to advocate for it.
And look at that gap that you're filling.
Hopefully, yeah, and we work to
Not
close it.
hopefully, you've done it. You launched it. It is off the ground. It is thriving. So it's really great work that you have. It's a great service that you've done for the entire Valdosta community, right?
Well,
The entire
thank you as
community
well.
needs it. So
And then I just add as well is that, so what we're doing now is focusing on expanding, because our charter or our mission, based on, we're connected with the Georgia Coalition of Black Chambers. So there are 12 different regions. And so one, I always pause there just to tell people that this is not, it's new for a lot of people to hear that, because there have been a number of attempts to do something like a Black business group, if you will, but no one's done a chamber successfully. And so for whatever reasons, and it goes back to some of that historical standpoint, just like we talked about with Tulsa, Oklahoma, is that I think in the back of some of our elders' minds, and I think for those that have been passed down that trauma, there's a hesitation to do something that makes you stick out like a sore thumb. And I think there's like I think Chinese or at least Asian type of adage that, the one that sticks up is the one that gets batted down over in that culture. So that's kind of how we've operated in South Georgia, in deep South Georgia, is that we don't necessarily stick out because of the fear of being cut off as far as resources or look like we're too good. And so anyway, so getting past that, the whole point is that we are 18 counties wide. And so with that, what we're doing now is branching out to other counties.
that's awesome. Well, I am so proud of the work
Thank
that
you.
you're doing, and I am so thankful that you are using your financial independence and your early retirement to better those around you, and to spend all day basically talking to me to be
Well,
able
I'm
to
glad I
share
can.
this with the class. This is a great service to this class and to the community. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'll just turn it over to you for any last or final parting words as we say goodbye.
Well, one, again, thank you. And I commend everything that you're doing with this platform. It is so out of the box that it will be successful. And that's the whole thing about it, going against the grain like none other, with no fear. That I think the students, I think the students will get to see that being exemplified. And hopefully this sparks and inspires them to lead their lives the same way that they were a part of this type of experience, and they will always remember it. There's certain things as students that we always remember, certain faculty and instructors that we'll always remember. And I know that because they're part of this, that they will always remember you, Dr. Watson.
I just want to say a great, big, huge thank you to DeWayne Johnson for being so generous with his time. I also really appreciate his candor in talking about topics that a lot of people have a tendency to avoid. So thank you, and be sure that you follow the Southern Georgia Black Chambers on LinkedIn and on their socials, and participate in their events and activities when you can.